All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL video. Going to be breaking down the Sunday night showdown here between the Minnesota Vikings and the Indianapolis Colts. Let's go ahead and get into it. So as always, I like to start off with a little bit of a game preview here, and looking at the Vikings versus Colts game, we're looking at the game total. It's about 47 points, which honestly, that just feels about right. Obviously, the Colts are making the switch to Joe Flacco, which in theory should help out the offense, especially the offensive weapons that we're most likely going to be targeting in this game. Injury news-wise, well, I should mention it is a 5-point spread in favor of the Vikings, which maybe that's correct. Like, again, with Joe Flacco there, it's just a different variable that I would argue that I would see the Colts being able to cover that. Although either way, it's not anything too crazy. But yeah, looking at the Minnesota Vikings, the biggest news really in this game in general is that TJ Hawkinson is going to be back, and he should be good to go. And so really, to me, that just helps out Sam Darnold as well, gives him another red zone presence. And so I think he's going to have a good chance to throw for multiple touchdowns in this game, just increases the likelihood a little bit more. And that's really what I'll be looking at there. And so with that, I want to start off with showing you guys really just the best bet that we have in general for this game in terms of just traditional sports books. And that's going to be looking at Josh Downs to get over, 64.5 receiving yards on FanDuel. Okay, again, if anyone's not familiar with this, we're taking the average sportsbook line without the juice in the line, so the true odds likelihood of those bets to hit, and then we're comparing it against FanDuel with their odd likelihood for a bet to hit. And so we should never be getting a positive edge. That should just never be happening there. And we are with this one. And so that's a big edge. I wanted to call that out to start the video. Now we're going to get into more of the PrizePicks and Underdog props. And so looking at this game and looking at kind of the props that we're getting originally here for PrizePicks, the first one that we're going to see is Joe Flacco fantasy score is at 15.5, which it really depends on which version of this Vikings defense that we get, and really kind of which version like Jonathan Taylor that we get as well, because obviously it's really going to depend on, all right, if Joe Flacco is not getting his over fantasy score, I think we'd want to actually bet on Jonathan Taylor to get his over fantasy score. I do think that is something that's going to correlate pretty heavily. But Flacco gets like a decent matchup against Minnesota in terms of like passing ability. They've been kind of I don't want to say a bend but don't break defense, but a defense that will give up production to opposing quarterbacks. This is what I don't like. Like, the best bet that we have here is a bet where the data is telling us to bet it, and I would almost argue that I would want to make the opposite bet of it. So they give up about an average of 18 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. The Vikings give up a lot of passing yards. I actually think looking at like Joe Flacco over passing yards is probably the route I want to go in general for him. And so I'm probably just passing up on this under fantasy score prop bet. But typically speaking, guys, whenever we see a bet like that, like Joe Flacco telling us to bet the under fantasy score, I typically tend to just want to stay away from those ones in general. But I like the over passing yards here. Okay, so we're seeing that probably on Underdog, a slightly better bet where it's at 241.5, where on PrizePicks it's 243.5, and then you look at maybe the average sportsbook line at 245.72. Obviously, the line on Underdog is clearly the lowest one. I think that's actually the best route that we're going to have for Joe Flacco in this game. A lot of people are going to like Josh Downs in this game. I'm kind of fine with that. He should have a good game. His receptions is set at 6, which does feel about to be correct. I don't mind the idea of Jonathan Taylor scoring a touchdown. That's kind of I don't think you can do this on Underdog, but on PrizePicks, you could bet his over touchdowns. And then if you wanted to bet Joe Flacco under fantasy score, that would be a bet that correlates. Or you could do the opposite of that, where maybe you bet, not the opposite of that, but you could also just bet Joe Flacco under fantasy score on PrizePicks and then just actually do Jonathan Taylor like over touchdowns on anytime touchdowns on Underdog. That's kind of a unique way to go about stacking it. And for Michael Pittman Jr., I kind of feel like the lines that we're gaining on him are correct. I don't feel the need to really go in on them. Like, I would say 5 receptions. The line probably should be at 4.5 receptions. I do think there's a good chance that he gets this over receiving yards. But at the same time, I don't feel the need to go out of my way to target him. I just feel like the lines are correct. And so we look at some of the Colts props that we're getting, guys, and it's going to be more of the same. Again, slightly better edges on Underdog. If you guys like Downs, bet his over receiving yards there. And then, Joe Flacco, I do like his over passing yards as well. I should touch on that a little bit more. So I have it pulled up here. So Minnesota defense averaging about 284 given up. You look at the Vegas passing yards, they do have it set about 246.25, which is very close to his projection as well, about 248.57. So all those data points obviously feed him getting the over. So I like that. The one thing we look at it, guys, we see his percent snaps. Obviously, week 4 came in for an injured Anthony Richardson, played in week 5 and in week 6. Didn't really play much in week 8. So if you're looking at his like per game stats or just like his game log, he's had like a tough matchup. Like to do that against Pittsburgh, pretty impressive to throw for 2 touchdowns. And then to also do that against Tennessee, honestly pretty good. 2 of the toughest defenses in the league to do that. And then he obviously tore up Jacksonville. So it's going to be a much easier matchup there for Joe Flacco. So I do think that all will lead to Joe Flacco playing well. So now let's go ahead and jump on into the Minnesota Vikings here. Interestingly enough, the best prop bet's going to be a kicker to get under 2.5 kicking points. And this is one that I personally I don't like targeting these ones like this. I do see the potential for the Vikings to at least be able to score twice. I mean, 3 times. Like, that's kind of what's expected, given the fact that they're 5-point favorites in a game that's, over 40 points. That to me seems wrong. And then from there, we do have a lot of questions. Like, what are we going to expect snap count wise? What are we going to expect really formation wise? Is there going to be any changes at all? Like TJ Hawkinson, again, is going to come in and play a decent amount. And I don't see that changing the structure of the offense at all. But like what I'm trying to get at is, will that lead to any reduction in snaps for someone like Jalen Naylor, who's been pretty solid? You also have someone like Jordan Addison, who has been vocal about his role in the offense. Is he going to get a little bit more work in this game? Like squeaky wheel gets the grease? Potentially. And man, what I'm noticing here is that Underdog is kind of undervaluing a lot of the players slightly here. So if you like a lot of over bets, the chances are you're going to want to bet those overs on Underdog. Like, for example, we got Justin Jefferson over receiving yards, 84.5. It's a much better bet there on Underdog than it is on PrizePicks. Now, I do kind of like the idea of betting on TJ Hawkinson to have a good game. I don't know. I just really like his talent. I would have argued if he wasn't injured heading into the season that he could have been or should have been considered the best tight end in the league. I know he got injured and whatnot. I think he's right up there. At the time, people were saying Laporta, at least for fantasy purposes, people were saying like Laporta, Travis Kelce. I would have put Hawk right up there with him. But with that, that's kind of enough there for Underdog. Is jump into PrizePicks here. And we are going to see a lot of the under fantasy scores popping up again. Touchdowns are fluky. That's what the data is kind of calling for here. If you guys agree with that, obviously you'd want to run those out here. I don't necessarily love the bets that we're getting here on PrizePicks, specifically here for the Vikings. Like, I do think Aaron Jones is going to be able to go out and have a good game against the Colts defense that has struggled to stop the run. He should be able to really gouge them and gash them. So I do kind of worry about some of the lines that we're getting here, because a lot of the bets that I would want to make in this game, they're just not popping up as good bets, or the unders being favorited here. So it's definitely going to be a lighter day in terms of bets. And so for PrizePicks, I'm honestly just going to go with Jonathan Taylor, get over 73.5 rush yards. I just think the offense will still run through them, and it'll just function a little bit more like a traditional offense. You don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson pulling the football away from him. His results should be a little bit more predictable. And for PrizePicks, I do like the idea of doing Aaron Jones for over his fantasy score as well. Again, this should be a pretty good matchup for him against the Colts. Now, that one feels a little bit tighter, but I'm still kind of okay with it there as well. And so just to be clear, like the reason why like a lot of the lines for Aaron Jones are like really not desirable, like his fantasy score is typically a route I would go, let's say an NBA, where there's not a big difference between, let's say, the PRA to the fantasy score. Well, here, just do the math here. Like, you add up his receiving yards and his rush yards, that's like 291. When they do a total line, it's about 100. So that's 10 points there. 3 receptions, add that on there. That's only 13 points. And so obviously he's likely to score a touchdown, but touchdowns are a little bit fluky as well. If he scores a touchdown, he's going to get that over fantasy score most likely. But it's almost to the point where you would just rather bet the over anytime touchdowns as a goblin regardless. So that's kind of the issue there. Might just go with his rush attempts. If they're going to be 5-point favorites in this game, maybe that's a way that we can go. Again, that's kind of how you beat the Colts. So I'm okay with that. But again, probably my favorite bet is Sam Darnold to throw for 2 touchdowns. I just hate the fact that it's a goblin. This is where they're kind of ruining their product by doing this crap. It doesn't reduce the payout too much, so I'm probably just going to run with this, but that's part of the annoyance as well. All right, so before I get into the 9 to 5 bet of the day, do you just want to call it the promo code that's currently going on the website? Use the promo code KeepCash and get 20% off your first 9 to 5 membership, your first month of that 9 to 5 membership. So turn that $10 membership into $8. Again, that's for the first month. Gives you access to all the tools that you saw in this video, as well as all access to all the other tools in the video as well, or on the website, sorry. All the fantasy golf tools, all the prop tools, and all the DFS tools as well. Take advantage of that, guys. We do have college basketball coming up as well. I'm pretty excited for that. And so looking at the PrizePicks bet of the day, again, just doing the Jonathan Taylor over 73.5 rush yards, and then doing the Sam Darnold over 1.5 passing TDs. Again, I think there's a slightly better edge today on underdog with how props are currently being valued, where all the lines are a little bit too low. These are my two favorite prop bets right now, but I do want to do another bet that's just honestly more fun. I'm not going to consider the second bet a part of the bet of the day record, but it's my way of having fun on a one-game slate and kind of bets that I like. But again, tighter edges. I don't even want to say edges, just tighter board today. And so kind of a slip that I think is just a little bit more fun. Again, you don't have to do this. But I like the idea of this game kind of being a little bit of a track meet. And so I want to take advantage of the slight prop line differences that we have. So like Sam Darnold over his passing yards between PrizePicks and underdog, that is. Again, you could potentially run out the unders here as well. Like if you want to run out Justin Jefferson for under 88.5 receiving yards on PrizePicks, that does make sense because 4 yards is kind of a lot, especially for like a one-game slate where we're just trying to find the little edges that we can. That's a decent edge there then. And then these are both off, especially compared to PrizePicks as well. So slight edges there. More of a fun slip here. But that's going to be all, guys. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. Honestly, that does help out a lot. If you guys can subscribe, subscribe if you never have, like the video. As always, guys, that does help out a lot. If you guys want access to any of the tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. I have a lot of great bets going right now as I'm recording this video on Sunday. Really need some stuff to finish off here. It's looking like it could be a massive day. So fingers are crossed there. Hopefully I didn't jinx it. Good luck, guys. And as always, let's keep cashing.